Hello, everyone. I'm your host, James Kamara, and today we are back with another episode with our phenomenal TV show Trending Topics. Today, I'm very grateful to be joined with my good friend and co host,
Alex Mashal, and we have a heart specialist with us, Dr. Emrani. How are you doing today?
Yeah,
Great. Thank you for having me out here.
of course.
Of course.
So, thank you so much for joining us. We know it's so difficult with time management, everything, with all the patients you see. And it's crazy being what you do, doing what you do. It's crazy. So we want to know kind of like where you started off, like where'd you grow up, what high school did you go to, stuff like that.
Well, I wasn't as lucky as you guys to go to Beverly High. I ended up
Yeah.
at Uni High, so
Mhm.
you know that it's not that far away. Yeah, I actually came here as a senior from England. After we left Iran, my family, we went to England for 3 years, and then I came here to the United States. I was in a private school in England, and came here to a public school to uni, and it was very interesting because the first week I came here, I had no idea, about America, about
Yeah.
high school, about private versus public. So in my private school, it was like a prep school. We used to wear a three-piece suit and walk around with a suitcase. And so I came in like I'm entering Wall Street in high school.
Yeah, that's
And you can imagine what would happen if like somebody showed up with a three-piece suit to your basketball court here. Like you'd get pretty beaten up bad. So anyway, I wasn't physically attacked, but I was verbally attacked a lot.
Yeah.
And people made fun of me.
Yeah.
But it was fun. I was put in a couple of advanced classes like AP Biology and AP Chemistry. And then I ended up in this history class where it was sort of bizarre. You guys are too young to remember, but it was this show on TV called Welcome Back, Carter. And for people who are older, you'll appreciate this. And there was like total chaos in the class. So people would like not raise their hand, and they would start talking to each other while the teacher is talking. And I ended up in a class like that. Like people were sitting the wrong way, and they were talking to each other, like not paying any attention to the teacher. While my other classes, it was like AP Biology. Everybody was so serious and trying to get an A in that class.
Yeah.
So anyway, I ended up in that class, and it took me about 2 weeks, and then I sort of like built up the courage to go over to my counselor and say, something's really weird about this class.
Yeah.
And she looked it up, and she realized she put me in remedial history.
Oh my God.
Wow.
So that was my introduction to high school
Wow.
here. Yeah.
And what about college?
So college, I went to Santa Monica College, SMC, for 2 years, and I really had a good time over there. It was it was very good for me to sort of like get a handle of the American educational system,
Yeah.
and then I transferred to UCLA, and I went for 2 years to undergrad to UCLA. And I was lucky enough to get into UC San Diego, UCSD
Wow.
Medical School, which was which is one of the top schools in the country for medical school. And
Did
it's
you
not
feel like it
easy
was
to
like
get
hard
to.
at all, or like?
It's I was lucky. I mean, I really don't know like how I got into UCSD. It was like a sort of like a many things sort of came together for me to get in there. But it was very hard to get into, and the applicant pool is very talented, and the numbers are really really large. But yeah, I ended up at UCSD for medical school, and I finished 4 years there.
Wow.
And then I went into I came back to UCLA, VA Wadsworth program for internal medicine, and then did cardiology after that.
Wow. So that's actually very impressive because my dad also told me he went to UCLA. He went to Beverly Hills High School, actually.
Yeah.
And he came from Iran also. So it's kind of crazy to hear because I know you guys are good friends with each other. My parents, they always talk so much. They love you. They love you. They always tell me about you. So it's
yeah,
crazy.
your parents are sort of like too kind to me. But yeah, I'm a big fan of your dad. He actually helps me out a lot at the hospital. So
Wow.
yeah, whenever I have patients over at Cedars, he takes care of them. So it's
And
nice.
how is it like having somebody's like life in like your hands?
It's at first, when you're first taking care of them, the first few years, you're nervous because you want to make sure that you
Everything's
don't make any
perfect.
mistakes and that
Yeah,
kind of thing.
for sure.
After a while, when you sort of like feel confident about what you're doing and you feel like your knowledge level is at a level that you can help them, you feel more privileged. Like, okay, you know what? I'm in front of somebody who trusts me to take care of them, and I'm going to do my best. So it's sort of, medicine is, there's a lot of hardship because you have to balance so many things to take care of that one patient, from like the financial aspect of it, and the charting aspect of it, and dealing with all the hospital regulations and all the insurance regulations and everything. But once you get through that and you sort of like try to figure that out, battle that out, then you realize, there's a patient that really needs your help, and they trusted you to be there, and you're going to take care of them, and it's quite a privilege. And it's, it's one of the few things in medicine that no amount of money can buy for you. The pleasure of having a sick patient in front of you that you are there to help, and you get them better, get them back to their family so that they can function and be a normal father, mother, whatever, son, daughter. That's like that's just such a joy that you can't get out of any other line of work.
Yeah, it must feel great like to do all that.
Yeah. How did you decide to kind of like join the medical field? Because I know in my case right now, like I just recently I started a clothing brand. I'm kind of just figuring out what I want to do with like my life, and I'm also interested in maybe becoming a doctor or joining the medical field. But how did you set your eyes on becoming like a heart specialist?
So I think ever since I remember I was a child, maybe 5, 6, 7 years old, I always wanted to take care of people. And I wanted to take care of children, and I wanted to take care of older people, and people who couldn't take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And then I found myself attracted to the sciences, and even like as a child, I would dissect like the animals that in Iran, it wasn't like your food wasn't prepared. Like you would actually like get a whole chicken, and you would have to pluck it and bring it home and like dissect it. Wow. So whatever pieces were left, I would dissect and play with them and try to learn. And I knew like back then that I wanted to like go into the field of medicine. And then as I went to high school, I was really attracted to like chemistry and biology and physics, and it was like history wasn't my thing, geography wasn't my thing. Even though I had interest in other things, this was like, it was just like a real calling, and that's the way it was. I really wanted to help people, and even to this day, that's my number one goal in life, is to try and whenever there's a problem, I try to solve that for people. That's my goal.
And what advice do you have for like kids our age, like just to like get to where you are?
So I think what I would say is, just have really good habits and work hard and listen to what attracts you. I would say find out what your strong points are and try to really work on what you're good at. So what happens is a lot of people like are good at some things, but they're not really good at other things, and they try to improve the things that they're not good at so that they can be better at those things. And honestly, like let's say you're a C- person at geography, and you really want to be good at it, and you work hard at it, and you get let's say a B, or but it's not where you are. But let's say you're an A+ student in math or in physics or in biology, and you really focus on that can take you somewhere. So I would say focus on what you're really good at. This is not what most people tell you. Most people tell you, focus on your deficiencies and improve them. I say the opposite. I say go look at what you're good at, because what you're good at is there's a calling inside you. It tells you, okay, you know what, this is where you want to go. This is where you're directed. And all of us have like a, just like a focus, in life. And there's something that turns you on about a certain subject. Like, for example, it might be designing. Okay, so if you're like a creative designer of clothing, and you really focus on that, you could become like the next Gucci, for example. But if you say, oh, you know what, I'm not that good at biology, but my dad is a medical doctor, and I should be like him, and I want to like really focus on that, maybe you won't be as good a doctor. So I'm not telling you not to listen to your parents. This is not personal advice. But for everybody, I think that if you focus on what your calling is, and if you really pay attention, everybody is good at something, and focus on that and really pay attention to it, be disciplined, get up and learn more than other people about that subject, and like really find a way to differentiate yourself. Now, you may not be like an A+ student. You may be, just above average in what you're good at. But if you put in the work, you'll be better than most people. So if you do really, really hard work, even if you're not like the smartest or the greatest, if you do really, really hard work at what you're good at, and you figure out a way to make that a calling, like how do I serve people by doing that, you will go so much further than most people, because most people are lazy. And most people don't want to put in the work. And most people like are saying, okay, you know what, I want to go into this because I want to make money. And the money always comes. It's not, like the money comes. If you do the right thing and you work hard, the money comes. So if you go towards your calling and you say, okay, how can I be of service to people? I really think that you can play the long game where you actually enjoy like going to work. I actually, there are a lot of doctors that don't enjoy what they do. I hear from them every single day. They don't like it. They were there to make money. They're now like thinking, okay, I'm working like 60, 70, 80 hours a week, and I'm not really making that much money. Why am I doing this? It's a grind. And you come to work and you're upset, and it shows when you're sitting in front of a patient. It's not a good thing. But let's say you do something where you really like, you wake up in the morning. I'm excited about what I'm doing. I like taking care of people. It's not work, it's like something that is a calling. And when you do calling, you make money. You may not be the richest person, doesn't really matter, because like I said, you're not only you're driving self-satisfaction, but the people in front of you will go and tell other people like, oh my God, I met this doctor that actually cares about me, and then that creates a vibe that it's a positive feedback for you, positive feedback for the patient, positive feedback for the world.
Yeah. So another question I have for you is, how did you kind of find a way to stand out from other people? Because in my own personal shoes, like I was saying, how I have a clothing brand, like nowadays, like there's probably millions of people that want to that have a clothing brand or want to start. And now being a doctor, millions and millions of people want to become a doctor. They want to do this, they want to do that. But how did you find a way to make yourself kind of appear different?
So I don't know how different I am. I think that what I do is I am true to myself. So I don't try to emulate other people. So what I do is I say, okay, what excites me? And I go there. And I say, what is it that I don't want to do? And if people tell me that's what you should do, I don't do it. Now, I do things that are uncomfortable to learn about myself, but I don't do it to please other people. So I do everything because I really feel like that's a calling for me. So one of the things that I think makes me a little bit different than other people is I express my feelings of what I'm thinking, even though they may not be great thoughts, even though they may not be like, they may be mistakes. Even if as I write them, sometimes I'm like, this is not a great thought, or this is not something nice to say to people. But I say, you know what, this is who I am, and I want people to know who I am. And I share that with people. And I think that people appreciate it. Like, look, this is a guy just like all of us, and he has ups and downs, and he has thoughts that are maybe like mine, and he has thoughts that are different. And I think that draws people in. So I think that if you tell a story, that's what it comes down to at the end of the day, is tell a story about your life. Okay, why are you doing this? Why are you creating this brand? Why are you showing up to do this work? Why are you designing this? What is it that gets you up in the morning and wants you to do this? What is it that you want to accomplish? What is your goals and dreams in 10 years, 20 years from now? What do you look forward to? And even if you make mistakes, but you're honest about it, I think that people love that. People want to be a part of your story and your journey.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you should do.
Yeah, because also like a lot of times I've tried something and like let's just say like, I failed at it or I've not been as good as I thought I would be at it. Like, did you have any moments during your career where like you faced like failure and you kind of were set back by it, or like any hardships that you kind of faced that you expected to do better at?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's like, it's funny. I was listening to one of my favorite rabbis, Rabbi Sachs, and one of the rabbis asked him, how is it that you had all this greatness and you never had any failures? And he came around and he said, you don't know about me. You don't know how many failures that I've had. And he said that the definition of success for him, and I don't remember who he was quoting, is going from one failure to another failure without losing enthusiasm.
Yeah.
So if you and that's how it's been for me. For example, I developed severe depression in my second year of medical school. When I was there, I developed like very bad clinical depression. I could barely get out of bed. I cried the whole time.
How'd you kind of like get through that?
I think a lot of it was my belief in religion, my connection, meditation, just a lot of meditation and connecting with God, connecting with my spiritual side, and it got me through it. And part of it was also time for healing. But during that time where I had depression, I remember one night I was up till 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, which is something that I usually don't do. I usually, had a very strong routine of going to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning and waking up at 5, 6, but at least get like 5 hours of solid sleep. I couldn't sleep, and then I would I didn't know what to do, so I kept taking a shower to try to calm myself down. And what happened was, the next day I went to class and I failed for the first time. I failed or D, or I don't remember what it was, my pharmacology test, which was one of the midterm tests. I eventually, of course, I passed it and it was fine. But it was the first time I failed something. I failed an exam, Yeah. And I remember to this day what it felt like. And I've had many other stories like that where, for example, I applied to one residency and I didn't get in, and I got into another residency. I applied to one school, didn't get in, and got into another school. I applied for one job and I didn't get in, but I got into another job. So I think, my enthusiasm for what I wanted to do was never diminished.
Yeah,
but I always, I always had plenty of hardship. One of the reasons that I say I got lucky for getting into medical school was when we first came to the United States, we had very little money. My parents had very little money. We were struggling financially. And, I sort of applied only to 5 medical schools, which is unheard of. Everybody that applies to medical school applies to at least 20 medical schools. So because, it's very hard to get in. And I only applied to local UC schools. So UCLA, UC Irvine, so on and so forth. And when I went on interviews, the interviewers the doctors would ask me, well, are you interested in going to medical school in California, or are you interested in becoming a doctor? And I would say, no, I really want to become a doctor. And they would say, well, why do you only apply to, UCs? And I would explain to them, because they didn't believe me. They thought, I just want to be in a school in California. Yeah. And I said, look, we had a strong hardship leaving Iran. We went to England. I changed, I think, about 7 or 8 schools in 3 years in England. And then I came here, and I've already changed like 3 or 4 schools here in the United States. And I'm sick of change, and I want to be close to my parents. And, that story sort of resonated with a couple of them. And that's why I say I got lucky, because they heard the real me, and they let me come into the schools. But yeah, I mean, talk about hardship. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, the emotional hardship. I mean, at one point, I remember I called uh, my father and I said to him, you know, I just got into UC San Diego medical school, but I don't think I'm going to go. I'm going to just drop out and work, you know, because I was so worried about finances.
Yeah.
And he calls me back and he says, are you crazy? And my mom calls me back and says, call him back and tell him you're going. You're
Yeah.
not going to, you know, stop because of this. So yeah, so hardship is definitely.
Wow.
So back to your grades, what do you think like your grades were like in high school and college? Would you say they were like on the better side or?
So I had usually I wasn't a top student in the classes. I was top student in a few classes, which I always excelled at math. I remember I cried when I stopped taking more math classes. I actually loved. A lot of times I would teach the class. You know,
Wow.
the teacher would say, okay, you know what, you can explain the subject better. So come up and explain to the students why you would do the problem this way. I couldn't do
Wow.
it now, but that's how it was then. You know, some of the like for example, physics was very naturally. It came very natural to me. But you know, overall, my grades were something like around a 3.8. You know, I wasn't a 4.5, 4.7 like my these days. I don't even understand the grades that you guys get. You know,
Yeah.
like everybody says, oh, if I get like less than 4.5, I'm a failure. I don't even understand that stuff.
Yeah.
But so I was let's say a 3.8, 3.9, 3.8 kind of a student. So I wasn't the best, but you know, it was
That's
good.
good, yeah.
Yeah. Also, because since my parents, they always talk about you, I like to always like research different doctors, and I was looking into the stuff that you have. I saw your posts, like the ones that you write, like Dear Young People, and those, they really resonate with me, and I honestly, it feels good to like see advice from someone who's older than me and what they've experienced, and it makes me feel like very excited to live my future instead of worried. So for the people that don't know kind of what your Dear Young People posts and your kind of like what you post on Facebook and social medias, maybe you want to explain that to our viewers.
So I do a lot of walking, and walking is my form of meditation. But I also do quiet meditation. You know, I do quiet thought meditation about maybe 15 minutes a day. I also have about 10, 15 minutes a day that I pray. And then I have about maybe an hour to 2 hours, depending on the day, of walking. And so during that time when I'm walking, either I'm listening to a podcast, or I'm talking to myself, or I'm praying, or I'm meditating. And I keep thinking, like, what would I tell myself if I could go back in time,
Mm-hmm.
and what would I do differently, and what would I leave for, what would I tell somebody who's younger than me how to live their life. And these things sort of go through my head, and then I come down and I put it on. It's not paper. It's Facebook or whatever it is. So I post that on there, and I say, you know what? I put it out there for the universe. Whoever comes across it, they can read it, and if it helps them, it's great. So a lot of times, for example, I may be thinking about, okay, what would I tell myself financially? That's a very important part of being an adult in the world, because you have to pay mortgage, and you have to pay for your kids to go to school, and you have to pay for your work, for your employees. So these things are important. How do you manage those things? And so I try to come up with ideas that would help somebody that's younger for that kind of thing. There are times where I think, okay, the world is very confusing, because you have the far right and far left. The Republicans and Democrats are always fighting with each other. And how do you make sense out of all the craziness? You're somebody young, and there is a world of thunderstorms and out there, and you don't know, like, what there's so much noise. So I try to clear some of that out, that is sort of universal. So for example, being kind to people, making sure that you work hard, that you put in the effort, making sure that you take responsibility and you don't blame other people for things. So I formulate those kind of thoughts that also are taught through our religion. And so I put those into like short 1, 2, 3 lines, and I put it out there every few days so that people can read them and sort of remember, okay, I'm going to recenter myself in life. Because what happens is, like, the way I think about it is you're on a ship, okay, in the middle of the ocean, and you can go off course, and there's a wind and there's lightning, and sometimes things are calm and sometimes things are not, and sometimes there's something breaks. And so how do you stay on course to where you want to go? And so these principles come up and remind you, okay, you know what, I know that maybe I feel hurt, but I shouldn't hurt other people. I should be kind to other people. Maybe I want to be like, I see that people are stealing and they're getting ahead. Maybe I should do that, but that's not the right principle to lead my life, because later on it might come back as karma to bite me, or it might come back as my own conscience, in the middle of the night feeling guilty, or it might come back as, okay, you got away with it once, but this is not a way to build a life, And so what are you going to be proud of at the end of your life? Like, one of the things that you want to think about is, okay, let's say you want to work hard and you want to come up to a career, and you want to design something, you want to create something, you want to create a business, you want to do something, and let's say part of it is, at least part of it has to be financial, and let's say you want to make $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, $100 million, by the time you're 70 years old, and you want to be able to retire comfortably. Mm-hmm. Let's now think about, okay, whatever your goal is, that you have that money now, today, in your hands, and you can do whatever you want with it. So now what kind of a life do you want to live? And that's the kind of thing I want to teach people is, think about, okay, you want to retire with $10 million, okay, because that's the way you're going to be set for the rest of your life. Yeah. Okay, fine. But think that you have $10 million right now in your hands. How would you lead your life for the rest of your life? Would you be a noble person? Would you be a kind person? Would you try to help other people? Because you're going to get there anyway. Or do you want to, like, step on people and, like, destroy other people and try and, like, not care what other people think and that kind of thing? And so that's another way to. But at the end of your days, what do you want to be remembered for as your personality? Yeah. And that's the way you should live your life, because every morning, basically, the way I think about it is, you wake up and you're writing a book that somebody is going to read at the end of your life. Wow. And that's the way you want to do.
Yeah. So with all the people that you inspire me, you inspire him, even my parents, my whole family. Okay. So with all those people you inspire, was there anyone that you kind of looked up to, or that motivated you to kind of become what you have become? Because many people idolize you, so I was wondering if you have any idols.
Well, I don't know about, I don't want to hear that people idolize me, because I know about all my imperfections, but thank you for saying that. It's a kind thing. But I think that, so one of the recurring themes in my life is that I used to idolize people, and until I found out that person was as flawed as everybody else, okay? So this is something that I find. So I would find a teacher, I'm like, oh my God, this guy is like the smartest person I ever, this guy is perfect, I'm gonna be just like him. And then, 3 months later, I realized, okay, you know what, this is not the person I want to be. This is like, look at all these mistakes he's making, and look at the problems with his life. And then I would get mad at them. And, I would do this over and over again with different people, until I realized,
everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah, everybody makes mistakes, and everybody's human. And, people have, there are things that everybody's good at, and there are things that people are bad at. For example, let's say somebody may be the best thinker in the world, or maybe the best entrepreneur in the world, but maybe they're not a good dad, or maybe they're not a good husband, or maybe they're not a good friend, or maybe, maybe they're not good at, like, ethics or whatever. But, there are things that everybody's good at, and there are things that people are bad at. And so I can't tell you that I have one idol anymore. I don't have that. But I have parts of people that I want to be like. So there are people that I just mentioned. One of them that comes to mind is, I think that Rabbi Sachs was a brilliant man, and he was a very kind man, and he was a man that inspired me to learn more about myself, my history, and also to become a better person. Of course, I don't know him. You know, the Talmud says if you want to really get to know somebody and judge them, you have to live with them.
Yeah.
So of course, you know, unless you live with somebody, you really don't know them. That's why I say to people, like, you know, people who say to me, "Oh, you're my idol," and this, and I said, "You don't know. You've never lived with me. You don't know all my problems." And so that's, I think that everybody has problems that you don't know about. But if you take parts of people that you look up to, and you make those parts a person that you want to become. So let's say you take this person's intellect, and that person's kindness, and that person's moral compass, and that person's maybe habits, and that person's financial aspects, you know, and you put all of these things together, then you have a guidepost of where you want to go in life. And hopefully, as you grow older, you realize, oh, you know what? I'm smarter than the person that I thought it was, you know, that I used to think was smart. And that's how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to grow out of those people and go for the next level, because, you know, you're supposed to become better in life.
For sure.
Yeah, wow.
And another question I have for you would be, what would you say is one of like the craziest experiences you've had with your job?
Oh my goodness, so many. I mean, the craziest.
I'm sure, yeah, there's
you
a
know,
lot.
I mean, I can tell you, for example, you know, it could be something like enormous, such as I took care of a man who ended up in the ICU, and after being hit by lightning in the middle of the night.
Wow.
And he, you know, his dog ran out in the backyard, and he went to get his dog, and the lightning hit the man.
Oh my
And
God.
basically he burned his head and burned his body, and was in a coma. And when I showed up to take care of him, I had a premonition that this guy was going to start walking again and come back, and they were going to pull the plug. And I spoke to his wife, even though, you know, I wasn't supposed to do that. I spoke to the wife, and I said, please try to buy him another, 5, 6, 7 days, because I have a feeling he's going to come back.
Wow.
And all the neurologists, attendings, and everybody came back and said, who is this? Who is this guy talking to you don't know what you're saying. And the guy ended up, coming back and walking.
Lifesaver.
And so, I didn't do anything. It just time.
Wow.
It was time.
Wow.
Yeah. But I had a premonition that this guy is going to walk. It could be anything like that, versus I'm having a very, very busy day, and somebody comes in and says, I just need 2 minutes of your time to ask you a question. And they come in and they ask me a question, and I'm rushed, and I'm tired, and I'm annoyed, and I tell them something, and then they go back and, maybe 3 months later, they send me an email saying, it was a very hard day. I was thinking about killing myself, and I talked to you, and you really spoke to me, and you were so nice and so kind. And I'm like, who was this person? I never even, I don't remember the person, and I don't remember the conversation.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, these are crazy things that happen in your practice. And, there are times that you save somebody's life. I have a beautiful Hispanic lady that showed up to the hospital dead on every aspect, and I started doing chest compressions and doing everything, and all the protocols, and she walked out of the hospital, and to this day she comes in and she hugs me and kisses me.
insane.
And so those kind of things, that's what I'm saying. Let's say you have $100 million and you go around the world and you eat everywhere you want and you travel everything. But you cannot have an experience like this.
Yeah.
This is something
Yeah.
that nothing
For sure.
nothing can buy. And I'm not saying that that's only in medicine. I think that you can probably have those kind of experiences in other fields. I just haven't been in those fields.
Yeah.
I think that there are moments that if you're available, you can change somebody's life for the better.
Wow, that's very interesting. Also, as a doctor, we saw the COVID-19, the whole pandemic, everything kind of just took over the world for a certain period of time. So did the coronavirus, did that take a toll on the medical field, do you believe, or on your personal life or stuff like that?
So in January, February of 22, I started telling everybody that we're going to have this pandemic. Everybody on, people that follow me on social media, that we're going to have this pandemic and it's going to change the world. And somewhere around February, I told people to stop traveling and stop, cancel their parties and everything. So naturally, I ended up with a lot of enemies because people would say, oh, you know what, I have a major party and now you're scaring people and people won't want to come. And I would say, listen, it's not going to be me. It's just going to happen. I'm just trying to warn you that to protect yourselves. And I called up some of the schools and some of the temples, and I told them, look, the world is going to shut down. Please start preparing for it. And I had a lot of angry people. And so it took me maybe about 6 to 8 to 10 weeks to realize that this was not going to be as big a deal as the world is going to make it, because initially we thought we were going, like 10% of the people that got this would die. That's the story that we got. And I think that the initial story of, let's lock down, let's find out what's going on, and then try to get out of it was correct. What happened was about 6, 8, 10 weeks after that, I realized that this is not going to be as big a deal. I mean, it is a big deal, but it wasn't going to be as big a deal as they're making it. That not 1 out of 10 people is going to die, and so on and so forth. Yeah. And so what ended up happening is I kept telling people now that, look, open up everything. We need to go back to life. You shouldn't have kids staying at home for 2 years. They're going to fall behind. You're going to have people developing depression, anxiety, mental disorder, suicidality, alcohol, smoking, all these things. And I also told them, look, the elderly people that are sitting at home, they're going to end up losing their muscle mass in their legs. They're going to fall down. They're going to break their hips. They're going to end up in nursing homes. They're going to have dementia because they're not interacting with anybody. Nobody's coming to visit them. And I developed a lot of enemies there because they said, well, you said one thing one time and now you're going the opposite. And I said, yeah, but we learned during that time. And just so it became very crazy. The whole thing became crazy, and then it became political and people were fighting with each other. So I think that the worst part of this pandemic was that there was the overreaction to what this virus was.
Yeah.
We really overreacted to the virus. Yeah. And I think that our overreaction by keeping the schools closed and keeping everybody at home as long as we did is going to go down as the century's biggest mistake. And I think that's something that's going to come out, down the line.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this, either side of the politics. I think everybody made mistakes. I don't think anybody got this 100% right. Mm-hmm. But I think the proper thing to have done was, number one, once we went past 2, 3, 4 weeks and we realized what this was, we should have opened up. And the second thing was that we shouldn't have had one person that was in charge of a country of 30 million people. So we had basically one guy, Dr. Fauci, who I studied in medical school and I studied his textbooks. And as I was going through this, I realized that he's making huge mistakes that is going to hurt a lot of people. And I kept saying we need to have a committee of people. So, for example, this is one of the problems. Like when you have a national or multinational problems such as COVID or a pandemic, this is I hope something that people will learn is you don't rely on one person. Okay, because the one person may be very, very smart, but if they make a huge mistake, everybody will pay for it.
Yeah.
So what you need to do is you need to have a group of people. So you need to have maybe a couple of doctors, a couple of epidemiologists, maybe a couple of business people, because the business people will see something that the doctor won't see. How do you manage 300 million, a country of 300 million people? And what are the other things that you look at? Look at it, it's like, there's this story of the elephant, and you blindfold people, and one of them touches the tail and it feels one thing, and the other one touches the leg and feels another thing and describes something else. That's how it is when you have a pandemic. You really don't know what this animal is in front of you, and everybody's blindfolded. So if you have one person and they only recognize the elephant with their tail, then it becomes like, okay, this elephant is a tail only, and that's all it is, and you're only seeing it, 10% of the truth. You're not seeing the whole truth. But if you bring in a committee of smart people of different fields, they'll see different things, and then once they see different things, those people will put new information into the system and come up with a better decision for the country.
For sure.
Yeah.
And how do you think like COVID's doing like now and like for the future?
So I think that the virus will never go away. So we have different viruses that are part of our seasonal viruses that come around every like flu season, and respiratory viruses, rhinoviruses. So this is going to be another one of the 4, 5, 6 that we have every year, and it's going to be around. And it's endemic, and it's not like a pandemic situation anymore. And I think that we need to think about it just like the flu. And I think that we should have thought about it honestly, just like the flu. Maybe 4 or 5 months after March. But even today, I'm telling you, like if some of the doctors that are writing about it and talking about it would think that what I'm saying is completely off mark and completely stupid, and they would say, no, this is not like it. Well, we have very good data that the virus is much less risky in young people, and it's maybe a little bit more risky in older people. And so, then you have to treat people differently. Like if somebody is healthy and younger, let them live their life. And if somebody is older and immunocompromised, then treat them differently.
For sure.
But there's so many lessons that we could learn from this pandemic, and how we overreacted to it, how we mistreated each other, how we mistreated science, how science is not just one person making a decision for everybody. So how science is, one of the things about science, I know you guys are studying science in school, when you go through physics, biology, chemistry, the true sciences. One of the things is that you have a hypothesis, okay? And this hypothesis is not the truth, okay? The truth comes over time, where people attack the hypothesis, okay? This is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. You have all these people attacking the hypothesis, and if this stays correct over time, then it becomes the truth of science. But if it fails, then you come up with a new hypothesis and people start to attack it. That's how science works. Okay, science doesn't work as, okay, I'm telling you this is the truth and everybody has to believe it. That's actually anti-science, and that's actually what magic is. So one of the things that people should learn is how the scientific method works, and really try to honor that system of when somebody disagrees with you, okay, you should not start attacking them and saying that, for example, they're anti-science or anti-vax or anti-truth or truth is not what you believe at this moment. Truth is proven over time. And if a truth is correct over time, then people will attack it and it will stand on its own. But if you say, no, this is my truth and nobody else is allowed to say something, that's not science, and that's not how it works.
Yeah, and speaking of like the coronavirus and the truth and all of that, I was doing my own research, and I saw on the internet like a new law that was signed by Gavin Newsom, and
don't talk to me about that. This is exactly what is anti-science, unfortunately, and I'm very much against this law, because there are very good, well-intentioned physicians who are contrarians,
Yeah.
and they like to question. For example, if you have heart disease and if you have a heart attack, the question is, what caused the heart attack? Was it the cholesterol that built up in your artery? Did it rupture? What medication do you take for that? And there are many doctors that come up from different angles and ask a question. Really, should the patient be on a statin? Should the patient not be on a statin? And there are trials and trials and trials pointing out that if a patient has had a heart attack and they take a statin, okay, that it reduces their number of heart attacks in the future, it reduces the number of hospitalization, and it reduces their possibility of dying from a heart attack. But there are still doctors that ask the question, and you can't go there and shut them up. You have to say, okay, well, maybe we're wrong. Why? Okay? So as an example, just this year alone, we had two major hypotheses that we've carried through for over 10, 20 years. One of them was the hypothesis that Alzheimer's dementia is being caused by these proteins that are deposited in the brain. And that ended up over 20 years. We figured out that not only it's not true, but it was based on a fraudulent trial. Okay, so the people that actually started the process were fraud, and this thing got, for 20 years, billions and billions of dollars were spent doing research based on that fraud, people being treated based on that fraud, drugs being produced based on that fraud. And it was the people who asked the question of, is this really true, that actually got to overturn it, and now we're looking at the truth. And the same thing with depression and serotonin. The serotonin hypothesis is it correct or is it not correct? And so maybe it is correct in some people, but it's not. The hypothesis is being challenged now, and it's people that ask the question. If you take away the questions, you've really gotten rid of science. Science is about the questions, not about the answers. And I really wish that the people in the top layers of the country that are such as our governor, or such as the people even like Fauci, would not come and say, what I'm saying is the truth, what I'm saying is science, and there is no other way. Because once you say that, you've actually destroyed science. Science is about asking questions, even if you think that you are right.
Yeah, I agree with that. Thank you
Well
so
said.
much. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very well said. Do you have any other questions, Alex?
I think that's just about it for today.
Okay, so thank you so much. Once again, thank you for listening to our show of Trending Topics. I'm your host, James Kamara.
I'm co-host Alex Mashal.
And thank you so much to Dr. Afshine Emrani. We really look up to you, and thank you so much for everything you do and for taking time out of your day and joining this.
Yeah, it was really fun doing all of this.
Yeah, I appreciate the two of you. Thank you for the great questions, and you took me to good places.
Thank you for the great answers.
Of course. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Awesome.